We resume from Walter Angren's Paul, a novel, from the point where Saul and his party are on their way to Damascus. The speaker here is a man named Jude, who is from Damascus and showing him the way. The sun came up at our right shoulders. We made long, traipsing shadows that stretched over rocky ground halfway to Mount Hermon. Odd, knee-popping shadows as tall as cedar trees. My face was glad for the warmth. The morning air was growing colder and my joints were tightening against the winter. By sunrise, we had already been traveling for several hours. The little Pharisee had struck out at such a busy pace that I reckoned we'd be home before night. 2 days on my own 2 skinny legs. I didn't know the last time that I had had such speed in me. Saul made folks breathe faster, rush harder, laugh gladder, die sooner. "Jude," he cried out ahead of me. He didn't turn around. He didn't pause or slow down. He just kept right on kicking dust with that springing bow-legged sprint of his, and he hollered out to the air in front of him, "Jude!" I gathered my own breath to holler back, "What?" And he shouted, "You're a good man, Jude. You're a decent, upright man, and I'm proud to be called your friend." He kept on walking, giggling, I think, if I could hear it right. But he knocked me off my stride a little. Even just to smile can make an old man forget he's walking. "You should have a talk with Mattathias," Saul called. "The pretty one, the dark-haired one beside you there. One day he'll be a good man too." The lad named Mattathias blushed and frowned. He did, though. He had the bloom of beauty, the sharp cheekbone, a dark and even brow. Cedar of Lebanon, he was growing into the grace and strength of a handsome man. Saul called back, "What do you think, Jude? Mattathias has an eye for my sister. What do you think? Should I give him reason to smile?" Mattathias wasn't smiling. His beautiful cheeks were oven red, his mouth a straight white line, his eyes fiercely forward. The other lad, walking beside him, kept glancing nervously into his companion's eyes, as if seeking his own right response. Suddenly, Saul turned around and saw the effect of his talk on the callow lads, and he burst into a high, squealing laugh. "Jude," he shouted, "the day sweet Mattathias takes my sister into his own home, into his own bed, that's the day he'll be a good man too, and a good man indeed." By noon, we had turned to the east. We walked strung out in a line, none of us talking, almost as if pieces of us had gone to sleep in the heat. Our shadows were small pools at our left feet, and the sun had stripped me of all but a thin tunic. My little donkey carried everything uncomplaining. Suddenly, in the noonday silence, I felt a blow at the back of my skull. I started to turn around, but was struck a second time, snapping my jaw shut. The third hit came down so hard it felt like a rock against my neck, and it drove me to the ground. But I swear there was no thing, and no one was hitting me. It was light, but a brighter light beating us down, blocks of a blinding light from the sky. And both of the lads were as low as me. In silence. There was no sound, just us grunting when we went down. Like we were children pretending, but we weren't. But then, as if the firmament had torn apart. There came a roaring from above, a steady thunder like waterfalls, and I tried to cry out, but there was no voice in me. There was no breath left in me. The ground was trembling. I shut my eyes and covered my head, and this next thing is impossible, but true. In the midst of the roaring, I heard 3 perfect words. "Tis Korea." So I opened my eyes, and in a blood-red seeing, I recognized Saul, flat on his back, his own eyes gaping straight into the light. He said, "'Tis Korea, who are you, Lord?" And the thunder doubled itself, and I should have not been able to hear anything in such a sound, but I did. I heard Saul say, "Ti poiesu Korea." "O Lord, what shall I do?" All at once, he jammed his fists into his eye sockets and rolled over on his side as if he was suffering a fire in his face. And under the weight of the light, I started to stand up while Saul kept rolling, rolled onto his knees and crouched forward and ground his poor bloody skull down onto the stony earth. And that's how it ended. The roaring stopped. It was gone so suddenly and so completely that I almost couldn't remember it. The light was bright and hot, but normal. I felt let loose, as if I would suddenly start floating. But Saul was all rolled into himself like a porcupine. From between his knees, he whispered, "Jude." I heard him call my name, "Jude, Jude." But I couldn't even move to answer. My joints were locked. I had stopped breathing. Saul said, "Jude, are you there?" Slowly, he unfolded his arms to their length and pushed himself up so that he was wallowing on his hands and knees. He raised his face. He swung it to the right and then to the left. And I saw the rims of his eyes were as red as fire, but that the pupils were gone. The living center of his eyes had vanished. "Jude," he said, "Jude, my friend, I need you. Please come and help me. I can't see, please, Jude." He said, "I need you." And that gave me motion again. And I went to him.